As we reported earlier, German Chancellor Angela Merkel announced a deal to form a new coalition government. In the last election, she lost seats in parliament to the right-wing Alternative for Germany Party, or AfD. A big issue was her decision to open the borders to more than 1 million migrants and refugees in 2015. Now, with AfD, the main opposition party, Merkel is facing demands to step up deportations of young male migrants. As special correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports, that follows a finding that they are largely responsible for an increase of violent crime in Germany.
A brutal murder in Kandel, southern Germany, has placed the country's open-door immigration policy under intense scrutiny. These marchers demanded protection and security for women and children after a 15-year-old local girl, Mia Valentine, was stabbed to death by a young Afghan asylum seeker. Her alleged killer claimed to be 15, but there are suggestions that he was older, exploiting a system which forbids the deportation of minors. Lawyer Martina Burswald.
I'm mother of 3 children, and we are here together to protest against the aggressivity of people who are grabbing our children and who are bringing fear in our country. We want to live in peace, and this is the fault of Angela Merkel.
Wow. Welcome to Stacy on the Right, everybody. I'm the host of Stacy on the Right. Welcome to the program. Good to be with you. And what we just heard coming in from the break was German moms and interest groups are rising up to protest it's absolute madness, the number of refugees who've been allowed to basically pour into Germany. And this is kind of personal for me, as you know, here on Stacy on the Right. If you're just tuned in for the first time, I'll go ahead and out myself. I grew up in Germany. We lived there from the time I was in 3rd grade until the time that I graduated from high school. And my parents stayed there for an additional almost 4 years after I graduated from high school. And so on all of my breaks from college and then from the Air Force, I would go back to Germany and visit my parents. And so we still consider it to be home away from home of sorts, my nuclear family and I, and my parents and my sister, because it's just someplace that's really near and dear to us. And so it's really sad to see Germany going through this, it's self-inflicted wounds, really. So it's something that it's not happy to report on, but it is the truth. So what are they talking about? Well, there's a big government study that's out, and they did a video. PBS NewsHour interviewed people in Germany. They sent reporters and camera crews over there to kind of gauge what's going on. And the news is pretty bad. Reuters reports that young male refugees in Germany are getting the blame as recently as yesterday, Wednesday, for most of the 2-year increase in violent crime, adding fuel to the country's political debate over migrants. So violent crime rose by 10% in 2015 and in 2016, a study showed, and it attributed more than 90% of that violent crime to young male refugees. It noted, however, that migrants settling down from war-torn countries such as Syria were much less likely to commit violent crimes than those from other places who were unlikely to be given asylum. So you're going to hear more about that in this next clip. And why do I have these on today? Because there's a connection between what we're seeing in a more advanced form. It's like watching someone who has a terminal illness that all they need to do is one behavioral change, and it's no longer a terminal illness. Now it's something that can be treated and can be worked with. And that's what's going on in Europe. Their terminal illness is their desire to virtue signal and to be, a refuge for all people from all countries, not taken into consideration for Germany. I've pointed this out before. Germany has the land mass of the state of Montana, but they have the population of a number of our states. Their population is over 90 million people. So think of that. The land mass of Montana, population of, how many of our states? I'd have to look it up. So then they want to bring in 1 million or more refugees every single year without giving them a chance to assimilate. Interesting. It's not working. Is that a surprise to you? Not to me. So the study also found that refugees were more than twice as likely to be reported to commit sex assault. So the problem that we're experiencing in that aspect is, people who commit sex assault who are white and German, so indigenous Germans, are less likely to be reported. And that you'll hear in the audio as well. So let's get back to it. Right now, the PBS NewsHour is talking. They turn to the issue that Angela Merkel is facing. The most recent elections were very, very bad for her party and for her leadership because they have coalition governments there in Germany. And so they're explaining how she's under pressure in number 6.
The demonstration in Candle was nominally organised by a women's alliance, but the anti-immigrant AfD, or Alternative for Germany party, was well represented. Miriam Kerner is a former AfD councillor.
Since Germany has been pursuing the policy of open borders, that is illegal, against our constitution, against our law and order. We have massive problems as we do not know who comes into this country. We are not in control. We have lost control. We do not know what identity, what people are coming here.
This is a place that has traditionally been tolerant, it has welcomed refugees, but what they're saying is that if murder can happen in a small town like Candle, it can happen anywhere else in Germany. The marchers chanted that Merkel must go, along with other slogans decrying Germany's multiculturalism. In Candle's main square, they were confronted by anti-racism advocates who accused them of purveying Nazi propaganda.
The girl has been killed, and that's all. She isn't killed because she is German and then someone is a foreigner. She's just been killed. And you mustn't make demonstration here against foreigners.
Okay, so this is the same logic that's employed here in the U.S. when someone is killed by someone who isn't supposed to be here. Now, in their case, they've permitted these people to come into the country, so there isn't an aspect of, well, this person is here illegally. But the question is, if you don't bring in, or do we bring in as many refugees as we've brought in, if we've seen successive years of crime spikes of 10% or more, is it smart to continue to bring these people in? The answer is no, it's not smart. So is it about demonizing refugees? No, it's about calling out behaviors that exist. And then you either deal with those behaviors while the people are there, or if you're overwhelmed by the number of people you've already accepted, then you say, we're cutting it off now. Everyone who lives on the continent of Africa or in the Middle East cannot now move to a country that is the size of Montana and all live here with the 90+ million of us who are already here. It is impossible. But people like the gentleman you just heard, that kind of analysis requires dealing with facts. It requires dealing with the issues at hand. There's a problem that the people who are trying to get into Germany have, and that is that their countries stink. The president called them a certain expletive. I obviously don't use that kind of language, but the point is well made. These are countries that cannot take care of the people that live there. Rather than these people barnstorming their governments or looking for ways to improve their country, they want to go to countries that have established social safety networks, safety nets, so that they can basically just live like Westerners. And why wouldn't you want to do that? Let's not act as if human nature isn't at play here. If you had the opportunity to leave a place that was a pit and go to a place that's not a pit, obviously you're going to want to do that. The question is, how many people, all of them? The German idea about what to do with this situation is, well, we can't say no. Now, we all know their history with Hitler and, the World War and all. We get it. You don't want to be seen that way anymore. But there's also common sense. The people who are alive today are not the ones who participated in the extermination or the attempted extermination of the Jewish people who lived in Europe at the time. So there's no blame for them to hold over their heads. The question is, how do we take care of it? How do Germans as a society decide how many people coming in, how many is something they can manage? What are the populace of their country saying is acceptable to them? It is not only Angela Merkel and a few other leaders. It's not only what they want. It should be, what do the other 90+ million Germans want? That's the reason why she's trying to form a coalition government and bring on some more support, because she's looking at, she wants to, I guess, rule forever and be always the chancellor there. But it's time for her to go. And so many Germans are coming to that realization as they are victimized by people who are in their country as refugees. And so a lot of the people who are coming from the African nations they're coming in as refugees and they're being turned around and deported almost immediately, or they're being given deportation orders, which then causes them to be very frustrated, which then some criminal activity ensues in the wake of that. How do you handle that? But that's not what you hear them talking about here. You hear two different sides. There's kind of an academic side that takes a 30,000-foot view and doesn't take into consideration that if your child or your wife or your aunt or your mom or your daughter has been raped, that you're not going to be as friendly to refugees being in the country. So let's listen here are the statistics. The 90% of violent crime spike in Germany being attributed to the refugees. It's number 7.
But a new government-sponsored crime study has generated more gloom for supporters of Germany's liberal migration policy. It was conducted in Lower Saxony, the country's 4th largest state, where violent crime rose by 10% between 2014 and 16. The impact can be seen at Hanover's main station, where large squads of police are on duty. Rising crime has been added to the burden of anti-terrorist duties. According to the study's author, Christian Pfeiffer, 92% of the violent crime increase is attributed to young male migrants, especially those from North Africa.
The social opportunities of refugees from war to be able to stay in Germany are very good. They were told, no wrong movements, no crimes, and you have a good chance of being able to remain. But the North Africans arrive here and discover that they all have to go home again and are not wanted here. And so they become frustrated and react aggressively.
But Pfeiffer adds the proviso that a foreigner has a 44% chance of being reported for a sex offence, whereas for a German, the figure drops to 18%.
The visibility of violent crime of refugees is way higher than the visibility of German offenders, which has contributed to the storm about this survey.
So there's a bit of unfairness there. So if you're German and a man and you commit a sex offense, you have an 18% chance of being reported. If you're a refugee, you have a 44% chance of being reported. Optimally, the best situation would be if you commit a horrible sex crime, 100% of the time you would be reported, regardless of where you hail from. But the German people are noticing, regardless of what they've got going on with the people who were already there, that the people that they're bringing in are not lowering their crime rate by their numbers. In other words, diluting the amount of crime that's there. They are exponentially increasing the crime as they arrive and are not assimilated into German culture. So there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to think through. But the main idea behind what is happening over there with the women's movements rising up and protesting, parents getting together, rising up and protesting, general people who are German citizens rising up and saying, we've had enough, is that many of the things that they've taken for granted, like the Christkindl markets, the celebrations of Christmas, which Christmas in Germany is a real thing. Like if you think we Americans know how to kick it up, Germans know how to kick it up. Not only do they have amazing, it's all cultural and everyone's costumed, and it's a true celebration that happens from the time you wake up until night. And it's the entire month of December. And they really, really enjoy that. And so many of the people who are coming in are coming from countries where Islam is practiced. They don't practice Christianity. They can't tolerate it. They've never been exposed to it. And instead of saying, thank God we're here with the paved roads and the running water in the bathrooms, they're like, you guys can't celebrate Christmas. That offends us, which is another reason why the German people want to see the people sent back to where they came from. You have to be a good guest if you're going to be a guest. Otherwise, you won't be invited to stay. So the crime is beyond being a good guest. That's an attack on the culture, which it's sad because you really get the feeling that the German people don't have enough of them that they're thinking straight to take care of this problem. All right, when we get back, we'll have more Stacy on the Right. Right after these messages, keep it here.
Preborn is saving babies' lives.
My name is Omaris.
back, everybody. Host is Stacy on the right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Today on the program, we have two guests, Melissa Mackenzie, managing editor of American Spectator, and in hour two, we'll have Peter Murphy, VP for Policy for Invest in Education Foundation. We'll also be talking a little bit about the budget coming up in hour two. So stay right here. Stay with us. We're really happy to have you here. At Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram, and stacyontheright.com is the website where you can subscribe and get the weekly newsletter with all of the cool updates and happenings, which I've just revamped the website again. Go check it out. All right. So it's my pleasure to welcome Melissa Mackenzie, managing editor for American Spectator. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Stacy.
It's good to talk to you. So I believe we're talking news of the day, I suppose.
Okay. You tell me.
Yeah, Demetrius didn't put anything in the calendar, so I was assuming we're talking about. So I'm assuming you are observing with interest the response to the proposed budget that Leader McConnell has signed on to. The president is supporting it, but the House Freedom Caucus is putting up the stop signs. They're saying they will have none of this.
Color me as Team Freedom Caucus. The Republicans, how many times have they ran on fiscal common sense and conservatism, and they get power and they're spending they're binging, like they're hoarding their American goods somewhere in a vast warehouse of wasted money. So just like the Democrats. So here we are.
So what do you see happening here? I understand the House Freedom Caucus has a very principled stance on this, but do they have the votes to stop this budget from passing if Nancy Pelosi has already signed on board and the Democrats agree?
Well, I don't think they have the votes. And so, Paul Ryan, of all people, Mr. Fiscal Conservatism, right? I mean, I thought that's who we were, Mr. Balanced Budget in 8 years, that guy. He's going to have to get votes from the Democrats in order to get this, and I think he'll probably get it. I think it's already there, so it's nice to see someone on the right stay principled in this regard, and I'm sure budget cuts wouldn't, for everything that everybody wants, wouldn't work, but it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous where we're at as a country that we're just empowering the government more with more, I think, what was it? They're doing a Pentagon audit right now, and they just lost $800 million. There's $800 million right now. They're not even done with it that they can't account for. And we're giving just billions more money. It makes me crazy. But I think I'm the minority. I'm not normal. Most everybody in America lives on debt and thinks it's great.
Well, we don't. We actually, what happens is, what I've noticed is when we go out places to buy something, the most recent time that this has happened to me, and I had one of the kids with me, is they try to make you feel like you're poverty stricken if you don't agree to take on their credit card. So what happened was we went to the Pottery Barn outlet to buy some furniture to redo our daughter's room, the youngest daughter who's now a teenager. So, the whole point of the Pottery Barn outlet is that instead of paying $2,300 for a bed, you pay $400 for the bed, right? So you're obviously not in need of going into debt to do that. So I set aside my little pennies. I'm like, we're going to go there and we're going to buy this bedroom suit, which is basically just a headboard, bed frame, nightstand, and a dresser. And she had other furniture in her room, so we didn't need a lot. So we go in there and we find everything, and we're just giddy with glee. And I'm not kidding you, Melissa, it was maybe 6 or 7 minutes saying, no, I don't want the Pottery Barn credit card. She was like, you get, this many points for every dollar that you spend, which means you would save, you'd have $40 to spend here next time. I said, yeah, but then I have to remember to pay that credit card bill, and we don't have credit card debt. And she says, well, but this is such a good deal, you're going to save money. Now, I know they're supposed to ask you twice, so I took that into consideration. I'm like, thank you, but no. She's like, it's just that I can't believe you're going to give up these savings. And that's when my daughter looked at me, and I looked at her, and I thought, is she going to make us take this? I mean, because we don't want it. We've already said no. So I think one of the things that we have as a culture is this idea that successful people carry tons of debt. They have tons of things that they borrow, that borrowing money isn't just something that you do for businesses or for things that you need, like something large like a house or a car. But anytime someone offers you some free credit, you should take it. And the government is the epitome of this bad decision making, drunken spending, waste, and really they don't even take care of the money that they get. And so they've been crying about sequestration. That's one of the main things that they're talking about. They're going to bust existing budget caps, not just for the desperately needed military spending, but they're going to do a massive explosion in domestic discretionary spending that's neither necessary or affordable. And I'm quoting a piece by Quinn Hillier over at the Washington Examiner right now. So he's pretty upset about this. So how do we stop it if we were told we were getting a Republican president and that he was going to do something about all of these different things that have upset us, including the spending?
Well, I think that what I've come to accept through this whole last year is, and there was a quote by George W. Bush back in the day when he said that there's no such thing as conservatives. And he was like, what conservatives? And I think that that's probably true. Kind of like, I don't think that, well, that most Democrats identify with the rabid, progressive, socialist mentality that many in the liberal media and even in their own representatives, talk about. I think that on the right, those of us who are conservative, libertarian-minded, me being one, are really very much the minority, because even on the right, people are like, well, we want to cut the budget, but we don't want that cut. We don't want that. You know what I mean? So, like, when it comes down to the actual, cuts. But my thing is, okay, fine, just don't increase it. Just keep the budget the way it is. Don't increase it, and over time, with more taxpayers and as the economy grows, we knock down our debt. But we're not even doing that. We had $1.5 trillion in tax cuts, yay, and but we're not making the cuts to our spending or stopping the spending and holding it. And that's really disappointing. And I think everybody's just, at a certain point, it's funny money. I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, it may feel like funny money, but I think there's much more danger here than I think what we're really taking into consideration. Because if the Republicans take on the mantra of the Democrats with the freewheeling spending, even if it's for good things like infrastructure or the military, then it kind of loosens the reins for when the Democrats are back in power, because they don't have a benchmark to go up against. They don't have anything to kind of hold them in. If the Republicans don't have some kind of standard for spending, then the Democrats will be even more wild and freewheeling when they're in charge, and they usually burn the money. It literally is almost like a burn that you can, see. It's crazy, and I'm not a libertarian at all. I don't ascribe to that at all, but I do think that fiscal responsibility and true conservatism, where you look at the Republican Party platform and look at what they've laid out decade after decade, year after year, every single time the platform is reenacted, it talks about responsible spending and cutting fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm not sure if this new budget does that.
Well, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. And the thing we have to keep in mind, too, when you said what the Democrats do. What the Democrats do is they create agencies and redistribute money to their favored groups to shake down businesses and everything else. I mean, that's what they did with the, what was the name of it? I think Mulvaney is in charge of it. But basically, they make the government into their master, huge political action committee. And so why in the world would Republicans want to enable that? I mean, we talk about with illegal immigrants coming in and then legalizing them, and then boom, you've got 20 million Democrat voters, which is why the Democrats are so keen on this whole idea. But when we increase the budget, we're just empowering a bunch of Democrats to take over and control, 90-something% of federal bureaucrats vote Democrat. And their policies are not kind to any American, Democrat or Republican. But why would we want to enable that? It makes me crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think we have an opportunity here to show them what responsible governance looks like, and I hope the Republicans can figure that out before we, enshrine this craziness in a 2-year budget plan. And I also want to say thanks for all the work that you guys do over at the American Spectator. Fantastic site. Really great to have you on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Melissa Mackenzie, managing editor of American Spectator. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Stacy.
All right, talk to you again soon. And so now we're going to go to the phones. It looks like we have a caller. Dave from San Francisco. Welcome to Stacy on the Right.
Yeah, there's a bunch of conservatives here who don't agree with everything less than that, and that statement you made is not true. Bush was wrong. People like you and me are conservatives. We're fiscally conservative. We're socially conservative. Stacy, I might agree that the military should be upgraded slightly because we haven't. Because basically Obama and Clinton destroyed a lot of the military capabilities, I believe. So I might say that we could increase that. But absolutely wrong statement that there aren't conservatives out here that would absolutely stand for being fiscally conservative. And by the way, Germany is being destroyed by Islam. We need to put it out there. I was there. I've seen it myself. And most of Europe is being degraded by that also, which, it's absolutely the truth.
Yeah. So, Dave, when were you most recently in Europe?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It was a long time ago. It was about over 20 years ago, but it's gotten worse, right?
Well, sure. I was just asking because we were there in 2006, so I was wondering if it was more recent than that. We were in Switzerland and 3 years ago. No. But Switzerland doesn't have. They have some people that they've accepted into their country as refugees, but it's not nearly the same situation. They're very controlled with their immigration. So we didn't see very much evidence of unrest there. But I've been following closely what's going on in Germany. And while I haven't been there since 2006, the demographic changes they're palpable. You can see them in the news. You can see them in first of all, they're one of the number one or number 2 baby name in Germany is Mohammed. Same thing in France. So they're making some serious mistakes over there. And I would just love to see them come to their senses before it's too late.
We have the same problem in this country. I'm sorry to say it's maybe not as severe, but the beginning of this problem has already been evident for quite some time. And Stacy, the real culprit is liberalism, which leads to all our problems. It leads to a lack of faith in God. It leads to pro-abortion, the lack of the ability to understand gun ownership, the military, and to be not a person that's clear-minded. Okay, and I don't think they're good patriots either, people that think like that.
Well, it's a tough situation. I think we can definitely look over there and kind of see what it could be like here in our country. We do have the benefit of being much, much larger in population size than France or Germany or basically any of those European nations. But the idea of how they're just basically saying, oh, are you needy? Come on in. Are you, without regard to what the people bring and whether or not they're coming in to stay permanently or whether they're true refugees where they're just coming in until the situation improves in their own nation. There's a lot more to this than just making ourselves feel good. And I'm glad that you see that. And thank you so much for calling into the show and for listening from the beautiful state of California.
Thank you, Stacy. God bless you, Judy.
All right. God bless. We'll talk soon. So I was so depressing. And I didn't play that audio to depress anyone. I played it because we need to really have conversations here in this country, and we need to explain. Maybe it's at that next time you have lunch with some friends who are all about bringing in as many refugees as possible. We have the landmass, we have the space, just bring them in. It's really about assimilation. And so just like you wouldn't move in a family of 10 into your household of 5 because the 10 would overwhelm the 5, would they not? How could you take care of the 10 if you were only 5? The same situation applies with immigration, and the assimilation aspect of it has to be respected because when people assimilate, they become fantastic American citizens. No group is perfect. There will be some who are foolish and do crime in every group of people, whether they're American citizens who have been here for generations or people who just arrived here recently. They're going to be outliers. But if you see a spike and it's connected to a certain influx of people, that's when you stop and reevaluate. And no, I don't hate immigrants, and no, I'm not xenophobic. So don't start that with me. It's ridiculous that people want to go there to personal attacks instead of just listening to what's being said. And the documentation is irrefutable. The government-sponsored study showed a jump in violent crime committed by male migrants aged 14 to 30. Christian Pfeiffer, who's a criminology expert and one of the study's researchers, told Deutschlandfunk Radio that there were huge differences between various refugee groups depending on where they came from and how high their chances were of staying and gaining legal status in Germany. Asylum seekers who are regarded as war refugees who have relatively good chances of staying in Germany tend to avoid trouble more. Around 17% of the violent crimes in Lower Saxony that were attributed to refugees, for example, were suspected of being committed by North African asylum seekers who make up less than 1% of the state's registered refugee population. North African asylum seekers have relatively slim chances of obtaining legal status in Germany. So connect the dots there, all right? Got to be real about this thing. So when we get back, we'll have more Stacy on the Right. We're going to be talking more about the budget and the House Freedom Caucus and what exactly it is that they're opposing. It's an interesting dichotomy that we're seeing here. So stay there. More Stacy on the Right after this.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
I think when I started, I had the same goals as everyone. I wanted to be the best coach that I could be. I never looked at my job as purely a football coach. As I started up the ladder and started interviewing for jobs, I think that was probably the buzzword about me. Well, he's not necessarily as focused in on football and winning as maybe some people would be. His language, his demeanor is not what we're used to. But I wanted to show people that I could do it in that way, and I could still be a Christian, honor the Lord, but be successful in what isn't really perceived as a Christian environment.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left. Just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Physicians keep learning after medical school in order to better save lives. Shouldn't Christian leaders keep learning to better save souls? Hi, I'm Dr. John Nyhoff, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and online around the world. Are you a Christian leader who thinks it's important to keep learning? WBS online weekend and evening classes allow graduate students to become better equipped to make disciples in a constantly changing world. For more information, visit wbs.edu.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
When a doctor tells a couple expecting a baby there are serious issues with their child, parents sometimes hear the phrase incompatible with life when describing their baby's condition. But the term incompatible with life is a judgment by the doctor, not a medical diagnosis. That term is a value judgment on a child's life. It conveys an attitude, not reality. Often what the parents hear next is the term early induction, which is a nice way of saying abortion. In reality, they mean induced delivery of the baby and allow the child to die. It's simply a late-term abortion disguised in acceptable terminology. Parents, I pray you'll never be in this situation, but if you are, please remember God has a plan for your baby regardless of length of life or condition.
Like us on Facebook at Life Issues and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
Sometimes I wonder if you're really listening, or if all of my words are just leaving my mouth floating up in the air.
Well, as you know, we took an official position last night to say that we can't support this. It is eye-popping and eyebrow-raising, and yet we've got to figure a way to not only fund our military, but we've gotten to a point, Chris, where we hold our military men and women hostage. So we've got to figure a way to correct that.
Look, I get the problems with sequestration when it comes to the military. I've heard it from the men and women there who are trying to make the most of the dollars and cents that they get. And of course, there is a lot. Paul Ryan himself has said we spend more than whatever 10 of the next countries. Why can't we do it for less? Seems to be a different tune now. But look what we saw in the tax bill. I was shocked. I lost money. I didn't lose tax money because I'm in that top bracket, so you guys took care of me. But I lost money on bets that you guys would allow that tax bill, given how it explodes the deficit. What's happened to you guys on this?
Well, I can tell you on the deficit is interesting. We got all these deficit hawks that were Democrats and everybody coming out when we were talking about giving the American taxpayer money back in their pocket. But they were not anywhere to be found yesterday here on Capitol Hill. All of a sudden, when it comes to spending that same dollar, which is not their money, it's the American people's money, they're very liberal with that. And I can tell you that when we look at the kind of numbers that we're talking about right now, Chris, we talk about a $1 trillion deficit over a 10-year period, and it would pay for itself over 15. This is money that actually won't happen that way. When we're looking at increasing it, we could give 3 different tax cuts the size of what we just came if we would just get our spending in line. And so I think it's incumbent upon us. We don't have a revenue problem, Chris. We have a spending problem, and it's time that we get that under control.
Wow. So there is a very well articulated perspective on why this will not work. And I'm interested in, and it's Mark Meadows. He's in the House Freedom Caucus. I'm interested in seeing how will this be spun? How can we justify this? So I'm back over on WashingtonExaminer.com, and I'm looking through the analysis done by Quinn Hillier, and he's been on the program before, friend of the show, talking about what this means. And so you've got, according to him, the new social spending is advertised as some $130 billion for the next 2 years. But by raising the baseline for future budgets, this really means it's likely a $700 billion hike in spending and new debt over a 10-year span. So a nation already reeling from years of massive deficit spending, including a demonic $666 billion deficit in the most recently completed fiscal year, cannot afford this new profligacy. So you have the new spending, which will either crowd out the private investment, catalyze the first major spike in inflation in more than 3 decades, or put unbearable pressure on interest rates, or all three. So it's a crazy thing that we're seeing. And right on the heels of passing this historic tax cut legislation, right on the heels of seeing 3 million Americans receiving these cash inflows through bonuses and increases in their base pay. And now we're going to basically say, take the guardrails off, take the belts off, loosen up the belt loops on the pants. Let's just let everything hang out. Let's just go crazy. Let's get stupid. Let's do this thing in ways we've never been able to do it before as Republicans. I thought to myself, when I heard that the new budget had been, they brought it up, I thought to myself, I said, woo, why am I not hearing the Democrats wailing and gnashing of teeth? Why are they not in the street, bucking back and forth and acting like someone's hitting them with a taser? What's going on? Where are the cries of the Republicans hate the rich and there goes grandma over the cliff? Where's all the anger? Well, the Democrats aren't angry because they're like, wait a second. Did you take a look at what we can get with this? This is money wasting on a level we haven't gotten a chance to do. We've been sober for a while. We're going to get drunk on some serious deficit spending. We're going to be hungover for years off of this. And that's what this is. The end result could well be an economic evil not experienced in the United States since about 1981, namely stagflation. Now, remember, when that went on, interest rates for purchasing a home went up to 18%. So not only could you not buy as much house, most people couldn't buy a house, so they had to rent. I mean, it just completely, it was a hot mess. And how do I remember that? Because at the time, we were living in Germany. We'd just gotten there. And my parents thought that this wasn't going to last. So their plan was one tour in Germany and then go back to the States, buy a house in the suburbs. Me and my sister were going to be in public school in a good school district. That ended up not happening. And the reason why it didn't happen is because they could not find a house in a good neighborhood that they could afford to purchase on. She was at the time first a stay-at-home mom and then a budget analyst for the government. And my dad was an enlisted member, a military policeman. So even though they made pretty good middle-class money, they couldn't find a AAA rated school district, public school with single family homes in it that they could afford with the interest rate being 18%. Because remember, that's a part of your monthly payment too. It's not like you just say, how much is the house? Divide that by 360 payments and go on about your business. You got to have the interest in there as well. And the interest is front loaded. You pay that first. So the combination of inflation and stagnation could begin to hit as early as this autumn, torpedoing whatever remaining chances the Trump administration and the Republican Congress have of holding off a Democratic election wave. Now, remember, I'm sharing with you what Quinn Hillier, his analysis of what they've proposed, and he tends to be much more conservative in his viewpoint. He's ringing the bell. He feels like this is a terrible situation, terrible idea. And he's saying it's not needed. The economy's already humming. The unemployment rate is at 50-year lows. The demand for social services ought to be far lower than usual, not higher. With a new massive tax cut, the further need for any kind of economic stimulus should be non-existent. And I tend to agree with that. So we really need to dig in and find new ways to save money, new ways to shrink government. My favorite statistic that I like to repeat as often as possible, because I know not every person who's listening today is going to be listening tomorrow at the same time. Every time we have a new show, so most of the time, our shows are brand new. It's a completely different show. Whatever you missed from yesterday, most people don't go back and listen to every single show they've missed. If you're out shopping or working or doing whatever you have to do, you missed the show, you missed it, which is why I will repeat the statistic again. 24 million people employed by the federal government. 24 million people. That's 4 times the population, well, almost 5 times the population of the state of Missouri. That is in a massive number of people. And remember, last I checked, which was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, I'll have to double check that statistic again. But it's okay to use the more conservative one because liberals are listening right now, scratching with their little claws at the fact that I'm going to quote the statistic. But it takes 9 private sector employees to fund the government paycheck of 1 government employee. And that's back before like 40% of them were making more than $100,000 a year. Do you understand what's happening here? The government is literally taking everything over. It's growing into an outsized, disproportionate share of our lives. That's why they're always on us. My favorite from this week, and it's only Thursday, we're past hump day, but bear with me here. My favorite one is once a year here in the state of Missouri, and these are not federal employees, they're state employees, but it's still the same idea. We get this note from the Missouri Revenue Department, the tax guy. So they send us this note, and on it, it's basically a personal property declaration. Now, you probably get this too. I don't know. You might not get this. This show is broadcast all over the country, 18 states and counting. Just huge number of affiliates. So yay. But you might be in a state where you don't get this note. But bear with me. The story's interesting. And you got to hear this. So I get this note, and it's addressed to my husband and myself. And it's always sent to our home residents. And what they want is for us to inform them of whether or not we've bought any new cars, motorcycles, boats, or trailers or hitches that attach to those said items. The reason that they want the declaration is because if we have bought anything new, they need to know about it so they can add that in when they calculate our personal property tax burden for the state of Missouri. So here's how this thing works. Let's say you don't own any cars when you move into the state of Missouri. Yippee! If you buy one here, you have to pay sales tax on it. So you pay sales tax, which it's split. Part of the sales tax goes to your town, your municipality. If you live in the city of St. Louis, it's 1%. If you live in the place where we live, it's another percentage. So you have to look that up and see, what is my municipality's personal property tax rate? Then the state has their personal property tax rate. And so you add those 2 numbers together, and that's the amount of tax that you pay. So it's like 7.5% to 8% of whatever the cost of your vehicle is, you pay to them. Now, Maybe you think you might skirt that. Maybe you might think, I'm not paying them anything. I don't like this. I come from a state where we don't have this, and so I'm not going to pay it. Well, you have to pay it within 30 days of purchasing the vehicle, because if you don't, you can't get that temporary tag off. The piece of paper that you either put inside a plastic container where your license plate goes, or you tape it to your back window so the cops know you didn't steal the car. Yeah, you can't get an actual license for the car and get it registered in the state of Missouri until you pay that tax. So most people, if you buy a car that's $40,000, you're rolling that tax into the loan on your car. So now you've got the car. You either paid the tax up front or you rolled it in, and you've been driving it for 10 months. Now you get this note from the state of Missouri. The note says, declare what new personal property you have. And it has the list of what they know you've got. So if they don't think you have anything, it'll be blank down below. But there are spaces for you to put in the VIN number, the make and model, the year, which is really important because the newer the vehicle, the more they tax you, and then the date that you purchased it. And you have to send that in. And if you don't send it in, they charge you a $25 fee. Now, if you do send it in, they update your records, adjust your tax accordingly up, and then they send you the tax bill at the end of the year. Guess when you pay your personal property tax in Missouri? Christmas. You pay it in the month of December. It's due, I think, on the last day of the calendar year. Now, you can pay it later, but if you wait too long, there's a little penalty that's involved, et cetera, et cetera. You pay it whenever you want to. But the point that I'm making here is, let's say you buy a hitch. Let's say one year you buy a car. The next year you buy a hitch for your car so you can drag your lawnmower around for your business. Or maybe you buy a hitch so that you can put your antiques in it when you go antiquing for your little business, or maybe for your own personal use. Whatever you've bought, you buy a second car so your spouse can drive it. You buy a third car so your kid can drive it because now your kid's a driver. And each one of those, you have to declare them and the date that you purchased them so they can prorate the tax for the year and charge you an additional tax. So you might still be paying monthly payments on the tax that they charged you for the sale of the vehicle, but now they're charging you a personal property tax that you have to pay on a yearly basis for the privilege of driving on Missouri roads and owning the vehicle. Now, why would this tick me off? Because it's a tax, first of all. I mean, look into my eyes. Do you see the fury? I'm sick and tired of everything you've got. Oh, hey, I've got a Camelback Eddie water bottle. Declare it so we can tax it. They tax everything. They want to tax the number of miles you drive on the road. They are also looking at possibly, because remember, the property tax from the vehicles is supposed to help keep the roads uptight and beautiful. And we have a fantastic, highly rated interstate highway system here in Missouri. And we have a lot of really well-maintained roads. We're getting kind of lax on the bridge maintenance. And so we went through a spate of that about 10 or 15 years. They replaced a bunch of bridges that were just like teeter-tottering on the brink of destruction. And so those were fixed. And now it's a constant process of improving things, just like at your house. As soon as you find something that you fix, you remodel it, totally fixed. Something else is squeaking and looking crazy and broke the next thing you know. So it's a constant process. But here in Missouri, we're paying a gas tax that's supposed to be for roads. We're paying the personal property tax once a year, supposed to be for roads. We are paying the other tax, the sales tax. Some of that, who knows what it goes to? I think some of it goes, the part that goes to your taxing authority, your town, that goes for schools. The majority of that goes to fund public education. And so we have all these revenue streams that are supposed to be for roads, yet here we are again. We need a infrastructure bill. So we need to take more tax money that we've paid in, record amounts of taxes collected every year, and we need to take that money and spend it on roads. Also, you just heard our guest, Melissa Mackenzie, say that they've lost $800 million or some astronomical amount that most of us, we don't deal in 800 millions in our personal budgets. Most of us who have small businesses that we own, we don't deal in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in our personal businesses. Come on. So they're wasting the money, and they're literally sitting up in an office someplace, charging you a fee if you don't tell them what all you've bought this past year, and they're taxing you on it. And if they could find something else to tax, like if they could get the people of Missouri to approve a gas tax based on how many miles you drive a year, oh my goodness, they'd jump on that so quick. Then they'd have to put a black box in your vehicle that would monitor everywhere that you went and make sure that you were taxed for every single mile that you drove. This is what we're dealing with here. So like I said, credit where credit is due. You guys know I support the president, but I don't support this. This drunken spending has got to stop. My wallet is crying out in agony. Stop. Get your hand out. Stop molesting me. The wallet wants to be left alone. We're paying enough. If they can't figure out what to do and how to do it with the money they're already getting, we need new people. New people. We see how that's worked so far. All right, that's hour one. When we get back, we're going to have hour two of Stacy on the right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Keep it here.
Urban Family Talk.
As millennials, we have more than $1 trillion in purchasing power, so you know businesses are watching us. But millennials are losing our faith, so we know Satan is watching us. Engage Magazine is for millennials by millennials, and it speaks to faith, purpose, and a closer walk with Jesus. Because above all, God is watching us. Visit engagemagazine.net and listen Saturday afternoons at 5:30 Central on AFR.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. It could be a long night for lawmakers in Washington trying to avoid a government shutdown at midnight. Jared Halpert has the latest.
Included in a short-term spending bill is a 2-year budget agreement reached by Senate leaders that would increase Pentagon and non-defense spending by $300 billion.
It's a good deal for the American people.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer is urging support, but in the House, support is less clear. Fiscal conservatives warn it spends too much. Democrats were hoping to secure protections for dreamers.
I can say that we're going to bring a docket solution to the floor because we want to solve this problem.
But House Speaker Paul Ryan says passing this budget and preventing a shutdown is the first step to an immigration debate.
The suburban Dallas police chief says the death of an officer who was shot responding to a domestic disturbance at an apartment complex represents, quote, the hardest day we've ever had. Richardson Police Chief Jim Spivey said during a news conference today that Officer David Sherrard was the first to die in the line of duty in the department's history. The 37-year-old Sherrard had worked for Richardson Police for more than a dozen years and was the married father of 2 daughters. An immigration enforcement advocacy organization is praising the new effort by federal immigration officials to go after illegal aliens seeking refuge in so-called sanctuary jurisdictions.
Federal immigration authorities have formalized a policy to send deportation agents to federal, state, and local courthouses to make arrests despite complaints from judges and illegal alien advocacy groups that it instills fear among crime victims, witnesses, and family members. This policy appears to be a not-so-subtle jab at sanctuary jurisdictions that are increasingly unwilling to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Ira Melman is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
The architects of sanctuary policies claim that they're only trying to protect what they describe as law-abiding illegal aliens, which is kind of an oxymoron in itself. But nevertheless, what these policies actually do is protect all illegal aliens, including people who are criminals, who have committed other crimes in this country. And ICE's attitude is, look, these are people that we want to deport from the United States. These are our priorities.
And Melvin says ICE is telling sanctuary jurisdictions like California that they will do whatever is necessary to find these illegal aliens.
We will come to the courthouses, and if we have to, we will go out into the community and find them where they happen to be living. And if we happen to stumble across other people who are in the country illegally, then we are going to actually uphold the law. We are going to carry out the enforcement that is necessary. Going to have real consequences on the people that I guess the California public officials care about most, which are illegal aliens.
I'm Chad Groening.
Atheists are not happy with a New Mexico town having a Ten Commandments monument on public property, but one attorney thinks the group behind this case has gone too far. More from Chris Woodward.
Members of the Freedom from Religion Foundation say the monument in Hobbs, New Mexico violates the separation of church and state. A local newspaper reports that FFRF also takes exception to gospel music and religious language being included in the recent observation of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Attorney Mike Berry of First Liberty Institute made these comments on the Todd Starnes Show.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation has made a habit out of bullying
cities and towns and folks across the country who simply want to enjoy their First Amendment right to religious freedom. And in this case, I really think the FFRF has gone too far. They sent a threatening letter, to the city of Hobbs because they have a Ten Commandments monument there on the property of the City Hall. And then, as if that weren't enough, they actually complained about the fact that the city had a observance honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for MLK Day. It wasn't even necessarily a religious celebration. It was simply a day to commemorate and honor the legacy of Dr. King that happened to feature some gospel music and some religious language.
Regardless, Barry said there is no reason for Hobbs to remove the Ten Commandments monument.
And Americans have got to take a stand and say, enough is enough. We're not going to bow down to these bullies from Wisconsin.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Your faith will determine your experience or lack thereof of the supernatural.
Dr. Tony Evans explains why, spiritually speaking, believing is seeing.
So it's time to cross over. But there's only one bridge. That's the faith bridge.
Discover why faith must come first if you want to see what God is doing in your life. Coming up this week on The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Within minutes, the numbers rolled in. The phone that wasn't on airplane mode registered more than 100 locations, 130 activities, and even 152 barometric readings. As soon as it hooked up to our Wi-Fi, it transmitted 300 kilobytes of data straight to Google. The phone even logged our exact locations, tracking us all around town, the Capitol, the hospital, the school, and the cathedral.
Now you may notice what's missing here is the exact route that we took, but it got that data too. It knows when I got out of the car.
The metadata has a time log down to the very second, tracking everything when they think that you're walking, riding, and yes, even getting out of the car.
Okay, so you're thinking, this isn't a big deal, I'll just put my phone in airplane mode. Yeah, we thought of that too. This is the other phone that we had with us that no SIM card also remained in airplane mode the entire time. Let's see what kind of data it captured.
The phone with airplane mode activated actually logged more locations and activities than the other phone, and it also transferred hundreds of kilobytes of data to Google as soon as it was activated.
The only thing that's missing from this map is our stop at the Children's Hospital, but it still knows we were there. There it is. Exiting vehicle, 100% accuracy.
Okay, so welcome back to the program, everybody. StacyOnTheRight.com. You're listening to an expose that was on Tucker Carlson, and I thought it was important to put it on the show because not everybody has cable. So you might not have gotten a chance to see this live on the program. And he's really been on it with the whole surveillance capitalism, which is an interesting thing. It's the way that people are making money by surveilling us. And so he's going to talk a little bit more about that in the next bits of audio, but suffice it to say, if you're not paying for something and you're using it, then you are the product. And what they're doing is they're collecting all of the data on you so they can sell it to people who want to sell you things. They'll either sell them the data or they'll decide what ads to tailor towards you to get you to buy things. And I know it works because I buy things off of Instagram. And I have been so satisfied with every single thing that I've purchased off of there. But they tend to tailor what they show me because they are now getting an idea of what it is that I like to buy. And what's interesting is it used to be that if you click the teensy, it's almost transparent. It's a little X at the top right-hand corner of anything that you're viewing, especially if it's an ad. Like in your email, there's ads in there. You can click it. Now when you click it, you get a note that says, why did you eliminate this ad? Or why did you take this away? Or it'll say, was this ad offensive to you? Would you like to hide other ads like this one? So it's literally, it's like a little person in there. It used to be you just click it and it would just go away and something would take its place. It's not going away entirely. It's just something else would take its place. Now, when you click it, a little algorithm queries you. It says, Why didn't you like that? What should I have shown you? Would you prefer 1 or 2? Like the optometrist, 1 or 2? Or 2 or 3? 2 or 3? Would you like to see 1 again? 1 or 2? And you're like, 2. 2 or 3? You're like, So, but he's not trying to sell you anything. You're there to get a prescription for glasses or contact lenses. It's kind of like that now. It's almost like the algorithms have a personality. Now, obviously, they take on the personality of the person who programs them, or it actually is a person who has typed in, not an algorithm, but just a simple query that says, if they X out this ad, ask them these 3 questions. And so at first I would just X completely out and I wouldn't answer. But then I noticed the ads would not be, it wouldn't improve. The thing that would take its place would be also something that I needed to X out. So now I answer it and the ads are getting more and more specific to the things that I look at when I'm on Instagram. So we know this is what they're doing. The problem is, if you just want to, as he's going to show us in this next audio clip, if you just want to go to the doctor, if you just want to go visit your kids at private school, if you just want to turn your phone off for a bit and not have it track you, but you still want to have it available to use to make a call or send a text, it's very, very difficult to do that. So you might be thinking, well, I'll just put it in airplane mode, because that is one way that you can save your battery when you're on flights. I sat next to a guy who was a really fascinating individual. I was flying up to Denver a couple of years ago for some work, and he's in the business in technology in California and Silicon Valley. And I was saying how I hated to put my phone in airplane mode. And he said, well, if you don't put your phone in airplane mode when you're flying, you're not going to get a Wi-Fi signal unless the plane is Wi-Fi enabled. But what your phone will continue to do is it will spend the entire 2 hours you're up in the air flying or whatever it is, searching for a Wi-Fi signal. And as it's doing that, it's running your battery down. He said, see, you're down at 22%. What was your battery when the flight started? Because we're about to make our descent into Denver. I was like, it was almost full because I'd been charging it in the chairs, the charging chairs while you're waiting to board the flight. He said your battery would still be pretty much full if you'd put it on airplane mode. And so we talked about some other things, some like emerging technologies, which at the time sounded a little weird, but now here they are, because that's how this thing works. And so last night, we didn't clip the audio for that, but last night or the night before, Tucker Carlson had some of the patents that Google has applied for. One is it's a camera that goes in your bedroom and it observes and listens to everything that happens in there and makes suggestions to you. There's also another one that goes in your kid's bedroom that will notice if your kid is next to something that they're not supposed to be next to, or if they're awake when they're supposed to be asleep, or if they're using, something that they're not supposed to be using. And it will advise the child, you shouldn't do that, or you should stop doing that. Like parents need a computer with a camera to tell the kids what to do. I mean, if that's where you are right now, you got bigger problems. You really do. So these are patents that they've applied for. And when they were asked about it, they said, well, not everything we apply for as a patent gets made. Okay. Tamp that attitude down. We're asking because y'all are getting kind of like, what is your problem? What is the thing with you having to know everything about every American at all times, like every place they've ever been? Now, I will play devil's advocate for just a split second. If you use the health app on your phone, what it does is it tracks your movements, so it can tell you how many steps you've walked, how many flights of stairs you've climbed, and it aggregates that data so you can look back from the time you turned the phone on and uploaded all of your information so that it was your phone. It's been tracking that, and it can give you an accurate picture of, hey, I spent a whole week and I only walked 5,000 steps the whole week. Well, you might have been sick that week if you think back. It's doing that as a supposed service to you, but the offshoot of the service that they're providing to you is that they also have the same data that you have. And they don't just know the generalized location. They're talking about knowing exactly whether you were sitting or standing, whether you were getting in and out of a car, and where inside of the location you actually ended up going to. Let's listen to him describe this in number 2.
Through complicated user agreements and free software, Google gets users to sign away their privacy for nothing. They're even following you in the places that most people would expect total government buildings, a children's hospital, a private school, a church. Every move you make, every step you take, Google is watching you.
Now, in a statement to Fox News, Google told us that users who want to opt out of tracking should turn off location history. But doing that is harder than you'd think, and most of Google's apps include hidden queries that automatically sign you up for the surveillance. For now, we will continue looking into how Silicon Valley sells your privacy. But until then, just remember, when you're using a free online service, you're probably not the customer. You're actually the product. Tucker?
Shocking. With airplane mode on, they are still following everything you do, and it automatically updates them.
So, and also the specific locations that you're going to. So you turn on the airplane mode and you think, I'm gonna, I need some privacy. And what it does is it tracks everything. Airplane mode is on, but it's still tracking. And then what it does is as soon as you turn it back onto Wi-Fi, it literally picks all of that data up, that whatever has not been communicated, and quickly communicates it over that Wi-Fi stream. One of the first thing it does when it comes back onto online onto Wi-Fi. And what they did, and just as a little bit of background, they took they call it man in the middle. It's a Wi-Fi box, but instead of only communicating Wi-Fi, it also takes in everything that's communicated. So it's like a little colander, if you will, where you strain the spaghetti and the water goes through, only instead of it straining through and going down the drain, the water that strains through, they catch it, and then they can look and see, okay, here's what was communicated. And the stuff that was communicated was very detailed. So it's not about the assumption that people are doing something wrong. It's about the fact that we have a right to privacy that's constitutionally protected, and we're kind of giving that up for the ease of use and convenience of these smartphones, which are connected to a number of really disturbing statistics right now. Like, for instance, the increase in childhood depression. Children are spending so much time on devices that they're literally becoming depressed. There are more suicides associated with high technology use in younger people, children, teenagers, and there's an extraordinary amount of bullying that's going on these devices. And so a number of the responses to that are, of course, you want to educate kids. So you have these seminars that they're doing now in high schools and junior highs, and you have parents talking to their kids about it. But it's really hard to tell, I mean, just on the surface, especially if you're using devices yourself, how much is too much screen time for my child? In our case, one of our children has to use a Apple device to do homework on. So every time you're like, what are you doing with that thing? Homework. So you have to go over and be like, that looks like YouTube. Oh, well, I'm looking at this, but I'm also doing homework. You know what I mean? So it's a constant battle for us as parents to be vigilant and make sure that our kids are controlling their usage and that their access is not unlimited. So I wanted to make sure that we continue on this program to highlight these issues and keep people informed so that you can make a decision about what it is that you'd like to do. Unfortunately, I think one thing that we have to accept is that if our phones are on, they're listening, recording, and tracking everything. And so if we don't want them to be privy, meaning whoever it is that's behind this phone, we don't want that group of people, individuals, company, what have you, to be privy to what's going on. We have to power them down. Now, I know on the spy movies, the phones are off and the people are still able to get stuff from it. I don't know. Maybe we need those, what is it called? A Faraday box where you put it's basically a metal cage. And if you put it in there, it stops radiation or stops transmission from devices. Maybe we need Faraday boxes in our homes, and you put all your devices in the Faraday box, and then you can talk and do whatever you'd like, and then you take it out when you want to use it. I mean, are we going to get to that point? I'm sure there's some preppers out there. I follow some on Facebook who probably have already figured out ways to stop the surveillance from happening when they don't want it to happen. And so, maybe I'll find some of that information and we'll share it here on the show. But I have to say, I find it a little disturbing that this is widely known. It's easily found out. I mean, Tucker Carlson didn't hire some, ex-CIA agent to find this out. He just, it's an investigative report. It's a journalist who did this experiment, and he drove all over Washington, D.C. He did this for about an hour and a half, just short of 2 hours, driving around and walking around D.C., going into locations to see, is there any place this phone won't track me? And he had two phones, by the way. One phone, neither phone had a SIM card. Both phones were powered on. One was on Wi-Fi mode. The other one was just regular airplane mode. And he had them in his pockets, and he walked around and rode around Washington, D.C. and went to monuments and places that are, the Children's Hospital, the National Cathedral. And he drove a total of about 14 miles. From the driving and walking, the total trip was about 14 miles. And the phones missed none of it. In fact, the one that had the airplane mode enabled actually took in more data and tracked more of what he did than the phone that was just regular. So there it is. So right now I want to also point you guys to our partnership with India Partners this week. We have boys and girls as young as 8 years old being trafficked and sold in the red light district areas of Mumbai, India. Many of the young girls become mothers. And so India Partners offers safe houses away from the red light districts of Mumbai where children of the trafficked women can escape the brothel areas and be relocated. $7.08 provides 1 day of safety, rescue, and care for a child escaping the red light areas of Mumbai. You can also supply more than 1 day. $50 provides a week of care. $100 provides about 2 weeks of safety, rescue, and care, and so on and so forth. Please visit urbanfamilytalk.com and give there, or call the number 877-616-2396. It's 877-616-2396. And give over the phone. You can also visit afr.net. So 3 ways to give: urbanfamilytalk.com, 877-616-2396, or afr.net. Thank you so much for sharing in this journey with us. And we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right after this.
If you like trips where you have to plan everything, then maybe our tour is not for you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Of course, I'm talking about our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, and then a separate trip to Williamsburg, Virginia. And guess what? We take care of everything. All you have to do is, as they say, show up. But we take these spiritual heritage tours twice a year, once in June and once in September. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation, who is a historian, will be joining us for both tours, and he will tell you everything you need to know about the places, the times, the events that we will experience on these tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. For all the information, just go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for everything.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. One of the greatest experiences in life is the restoration of a broken relationship. I have 2 friends who, for a period of time, were estranged from each other. Both were offended by the actions and talk of the other. To further complicate the matter, there were misunderstandings and things said by others that poured fuel on the fire. But there's a good ending. After several months of this wrangling back and forth, they both felt convicted, and they decided to do what they probably should have done at the very beginning. They called a meeting and met several times over the next couple of weeks, and they ironed things out. They forgave each other, and they asked God to forgive them. Their relationship was wonderfully restored. When I think about that, I'm reminded that God is in the business of bringing people together. That's what we call reconciliation. The Apostle Paul reminds us of that in Ephesians chapter 2, starting in verse 13. Listen to this mandate. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were formerly far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who made both groups into one and broke down the barrier of the dividing wall. Verse 16. And might reconcile them both in one body to God through the cross, by it having put to death the enmity. Isn't that wonderful? Because we have been reconciled with God, totally adjusted to a perfect standard by a perfect Savior through his death on the cross, we now can reach out in harmony and unity with our brothers and sisters in the body of Christ. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. We were once enemies of God, but now we are his friends. We're members of his family. Let's reach out in love and forgiveness to our other family members.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
I face a giant in over my head. Help me to look up.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Ride here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. It's my pleasure to be with you. And it's also my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Peter Murphy, VP for Policy for Invest in Education Foundation. Peter, thank you so much for coming on today.
Stacy, it's great to be with you today.
It's great to have you on. I'm really interested in the topic that you're bringing to the show today, which is the National K through 12 Scholarship Tax Credit. The way that I'm viewing the school choice movement right now is that we've had a huge win with the president giving all Americans the ability to take their 529 tax savings accounts or their savings accounts for their kids' education, for higher education, and now you can use those for private school. But that doesn't tackle the millions of families that are not participating in 529 plans because they don't have the means to do so, and they're trapped in failing schools. And we need something to help those families as well. So tell us about this campaign to promote school choice.
Stacy, you're absolutely correct about that. I think the 529 proposal that Congress did with the backing of the Trump administration was a step forward. It's going to help a lot of families. It's been a successful and popular program for higher ed, and they're taking what works there and doing it and enabling families to use that savings for K-12. But the real next frontier in this really needs to be, what is the best way we can bring educational empowerment, freedom and choice to low-income families, to working-class families, and frankly to many struggling middle class who are in a bad situation and need the same kind of help. And so what the K-12 scholarship proposal does, and what it has done in several states are sort of as laboratories of democracy. Well, this K-12 approach for scholarship tax credits has worked very effectively in several states across the country. And so we're pushing Congress to take this idea that's worked well at the state level and make it national. And what it simply means is it's Congress taking the tax code and enhancing a charitable donation for contributions to scholarship funds. Scholarship funds exist throughout the country, and it's in effect a redistribution means by which people make donations and children and families get these scholarships and they can go to K-12 school, because really that's really what it is. It's using the tax code, bringing a new incentive to play so that more money flows into these scholarship funds and more families get help.
Okay, so how do you get a campaign to promote school choice? So you're looking for the legislators to actually bring this in as a bill into Congress and then the president to sign it into law. Is that the eventual goal?
Exactly. So we're talking on to radio hosts like yourself, getting the word out. We are talking to members of Congress and their staffs throughout Capitol Hill. This has been an ongoing effort. We began it last year, and we're bringing these fabulous results of how families have been helped throughout the country. And but we shouldn't be content with a few thousand families getting help, because the need is much, much greater than that. And the other thing is, as you know, I mean, look, we only have children young once. We have to get their schooling options right while they're young. Otherwise, we're going to keep losing kids. And we need to graduate children ready for college, and for all the help that we see going to kids in college, and we have to graduate them first. We don't want to lose children before they even get to college. And so the scholarship tax credit, by generating more donations into scholarship funds, is just going to reach potentially millions more families in every corner of this country. I mean, you have some states that have done this, But you also have states that will never do this. And millions of kids are going to be left out. Kids in New York City and California and places in between. We've got to reach them. And really, Congress can step up and do this. The Trump administration needs to step up and do this, and that's what we're fighting for.
So what else what are the parameters of the campaign? You're going on to radio shows and you're doing some media about it. Do you guys have an op-ed campaign going on? What else are you doing to try to inform Americans?
We've been writing op-eds. We also have an initiative. The Investment Education Foundation, where I work, has set up an initiative called edtaxcredit50.org. edtaxcredit50.org. That's a website where we've been building a national coalition of organizations that have all come out in favor of this effort. And so it's more than 250 organizations that signed on to this. That's an ongoing process of getting more of these organizations so we can go to these congresspeople and say, look, we've got these numbers of groups in your state that represent thousands of constituents in your state. This is what they want. They want to see action on this. So it's really a combination of things that we're doing. And I think what the 529 success did last month was build momentum. Because remember, that was the first time Congress actually did something on school choice in 21 years. I mean, they hadn't done anything on the issue in a long time, and so we finally broke that logjam. But we need to build on it because, again, we're not reaching enough of the families that we need to reach, particularly on the lower income scale.
Yeah, so I was really surprised at that 529 one that was included. I know they wanted to have it for homeschool families as well. For families to use their 529 funds for homeschooling expenses, and the Democrats wouldn't let that through. But I have to say, just the fact that they did something and that it was, to me, pretty substantial, the 529 thing, it's your money. You're saving it. If it's for education, you should be able to use it for education, whether it's, for preschool all the way up through, graduate school and beyond, and technical school, training schools, certifications, continuing education. I mean, really, if it's educationally based, you should be able to use it. The government shouldn't be able to say, well, only this kind or only that kind. But the fact that they were able to do it means now we've taken that first step, that first bite, and, it's like, come on in, the water's fine. Let's do some more school choice. Come and just round yourself in here.
That's exactly right. Well said. And the thing about school choice is, it really should be a nonpartisan or bipartisan issue because, in my view, Stacy, this really blends the philosophical divide, if you will. You have Republicans, right-of-center politicians that believe in, freedom of choice in schools and competition, and then you have on the Democratic side, you have more of a redistributionist mentality, and that's what this K-12 scholarship tax credit does. You're generating donations from middle and upper income people to go into these scholarship funds to really help low and middle income people. It's a classic means by which you get money to poor people, you get money to working class kids, and you change their whole life's trajectory. There is not a more progressive thing that a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or that will ever do in their career than to vote for something like this, because it is a game changer. It is a life-changing policy that will have enormous impact if we can get this done.
Well, I'm really excited. I think there's something to be said for people just, the Democrats often will say, well, the Republicans don't want to do anything. They won't try anything. And for school choice, I feel like the Democrats are in that boat. Like they could be very well right that Republicans don't like trying things. That, that kind of goes along with the conservative approach, not just trying any old thing, not liking to try new things, not liking new things at all. But on the other side of that coin is a kind of hesitancy for Democrats to admit that public education is not what it used to be and that it doesn't serve certain communities well. And so a lot of these communities that are not well served happen to be constituents of the Democrats. And what I found is at the local level, you can find a lot of parity between people who are not political. Like they'll tell you in a heartbeat, yeah, I think we should have school choice. I'm a Democrat. I love Bernie Sanders or I loved Hillary Clinton or whatever. But I think we should have more choice in education because I have friends who live in the inner city, or we live in the inner city, or we live in a school district that's not top notch. And I'd love to have my dollars go with my child to X. And then, everybody has a different choice. But it's when you get out of the regular people and into the activists that you find this intransience, where they just can't let go of the idea that the only place kids should go, except their own, is public school, no matter what the public school is like. So I want to see more programs like this. Like, I'd love to see this just sweep the country and, Congress to act and put a bill on the president's desk. He signs it, and then you have this. And then I'd love to see other groups that I've interfaced with for their programs to get a crack at the wheel, where they can basically say, look, in New York, we're doing this. In Missouri, we're doing this. And everybody have some things that they're doing. People could move to experience other things, or they could say, that looks awesome, let's try that here. But more of as many different children as there are different educational options. And why not fund all of it and let people choose?
Well, Stacy, you have, as you know, a public education establishment that is very locked into their system. And they want children to stay in that system. And look, I don't begrudge more money for public education. By all means, fix it and improve it. But that's not a reason to not do a K-12 scholarship or other school choice measure. If we expand school choice options, that in no way precludes anyone from fixing traditional public school districts. It's not a zero-sum game. You can do both. You should do both. But what we run into this brick wall of opposition on the public education establishment side that says, no, you can't have that. We don't want you to do that. And it's a one-size-fits-all. We should get all the resources, and you should just be consigned to us. That's a horrible message to send. But and in addition to the fact that public education's like steering the Titanic. It's a long slog to fix some of these things. Well, parents don't have time for that. Okay, they don't. 5, 6, 7 years go by, they could lose their child in a lousy system, waiting for it to get fixed. That's a horrible message to send a parent. You put them in a better school where upper income and wealthy people send their kids to school. Why shouldn't they have the same opportunity? And they can have the same opportunity. That's what we need to deliver for them.
I agree. And I hope the program takes off, and I hope that the legislators are listening. And certainly I hope people are seeing these op-eds all over the country and really kind of ingesting the information and giving the thought and idea of this idea an opportunity. It's to me, it's an opportunity. And all of these things don't work everywhere, but that's kind of the beauty of what we have going on in America, that you can have things that don't work in Missouri that work in California and vice versa. And really, it's up to us to say we want that, and we want to stand up to the educational establishment that kind of says there's only one way to educate a child, and that's public school. And if your public school's failed, just wait until it gets better, no matter that kids are they're on their way to prison if they can't read and do math by 4th grade. And that's even in a great family situation. I mean, you have kids coming from 2-parent households where the parents are working class, middle class, even upper class, who fall into drug abuse and illegal behavior because they are behind grade level. And by the time they're in middle school, they can't do anything that's being taught in the classroom, which means they're very susceptible to getting sucked out and into crime, into sex abuse and all kinds of other things that really should never have been on their horizon. So it's really a life or death type of thing. People don't see it that way, and I hope that they will. And I hope they support your program. I went to the website. It's edtaxcredit50.org, edtaxcredit50.org. You can go to my Twitter feed where we've been tweeting back and forth about this appearance today. Peter Murphy, VP for Policy and Invest Education Foundation. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Stacy, thank you very much for having me on.
All right. Talk to you again soon. Yeah. I'm always excited when I hear people getting passionate about school choice. We have a number of school choice organizations here in the state of Missouri that have been battling tirelessly to provide options to parents who live in the city. And they have been successful in spite of the odds. The NEA is very strong here, especially in rural areas. And they bulk up in the rural areas, elect legislators who say they're Republicans. And then as soon as they get in there, they'll do anything except NEA stuff. Like, they will not go against the public schools. And I really also hate that idea that when you talk about school choice, you're against public schools. I used to be on a school board. I was an elected official on a school board. I was a director and a vice president. I was also secretary of that board. So I held executive positions on that board. I am not against public education. I am of the mindset that in certain situations, you can get this high quality, fantastic public education. And in so many other instances, you cannot. And so I attended one of the school choice events that they had here in Missouri. And it was in the city of St. Louis in one of the charter schools that has cropped up there. And what I was surprised to find was not only was the group very, very diverse that were there listening to all of the presentations, but so I wasn't there, like, I'm Stacy on the right, I'm ready. I just went in, had my regular clothes like I normally look when I'm just out and about in town. And I didn't have a whole bunch of stuff with me, like, any microphones or anything like that. I just had the folder they gave me and a pencil. I took a couple of notes. And afterwards, I asked some of the parents, do your kids go to this charter school or what? What I learned that night was that these people moved into the city from other areas of the suburbs of St. Louis. And it was kind of like a wave that they didn't see coming. Two families moved near each other. So on adjacent streets near a charter school. Two more families moved in. One guy came in and took a derelict building and totally, basically it's a new house now. Before you know it, they've got 3 streets in an area of the city that was almost empty, now full to the brim and kids everywhere. And they're all going to the charter school. She talked about neighborhood revitalization like that going on all over the city in areas near these new charter schools. How can you be against that? These people are choosing to live there, and they're improving the neighborhood and upping the tax base to boot. We've got to find a way to communicate that and to get more of this good common sense policy passed through our Congress and onto the president's desk. All right, when we get back, we'll have more for you right here on Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Stay there.
What does it take to live an uncommon life? Here's former Super Bowl winning coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
Chuck Noll was an extraordinary coach and catalyst for the Pittsburgh Steelers, leading them to 4 Super Bowl wins in just 6 years. But he was never voted Coach of the Year, and that's just the way Coach Noll wanted it, never taking credit for success, but rather giving the credit to his players. People who can lead effectively and successfully, whether on the football field or in any career field, are a dime a dozen. But leaders who are willing to place the focus somewhere else other than themselves are truly unique. True success comes in how you lead others, not in the recognition and rewards that you receive.
New York Times best-selling author Tony Dungy, author of the popular Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. Stacy Washington.
And so to this day, I don't eat green beans. If they bring me a plate of food at a restaurant and they've substituted green beans for some other vegetable because the other vegetable is out of season, I will make them bring me a saucer and remove the green beans from my plate and take them off of the table because I cannot abide green beans. And so Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have to sit down to the table and it's loaded up high with green beans and they have to stay there until they've eaten them all. That's the table they set. They boiled the green beans, they picked them, they snapped them, they put them into the steamer, they've cooked them, they seasoned them with salt and pepper, and now they're on the table with a little side of butter, and that's all they're getting, and they're going to have to eat these until they win.
Stacy on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk.
If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, if you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies, if you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, there's a better life, there's a better life. If you got paid.
Problem, and it's time that we get that under control.
Well, you may have both now, right? I mean, because that's a giant if that this tax cut will pay for itself. You will certainly
Well, I don't know
have
that
less
it's a big
revenue.
if. I'll be glad to come back at some other time and we can debate that back and forth because, you know, I can give you real numbers. But right now, when you look at the economy growing, hopefully, as much as 5% in this next quarter, it's good for the American people. And so to suggest that that was the wrong move actually would be to discount 3 million people that have gotten bonuses, wages that are going up, and that's good for the economy.
Well, it could be. I mean, we know this is, you know, we know this discussion.
Well, it's good
We've had it a long time, but 5%. What did the government come up with a cure for cancer I don't know about?
No, you may make the argument that it may not be good in the future, but today it's good for the American people. We're seeing it in their paychecks.
There's some truth there. We want to see more of the activity that we've seen since the passage of the tax cut. We want to see more of Americans getting to keep their money, do what they want with their money, and businesses being able to make the choice to increase pay, increase benefits, offer bonuses, whatever they want to do. Because the leftist way is to say, you have to pay $15 an hour, regardless of whether you can afford it or you want to, or the people have earned it, or the skill level matches the amount of pay. It's everybody's got to make this. On the other hand, you've got policy that drives good behavior, that drives the results that you're looking for. And that's what we're seeing here. So we don't want to take a big sledgehammer to all of the fantastic results we've already experienced. And so I don't know if I would go as far as to call it wildly irresponsible, but I think we really need to look. We need to look a little bit harder at what it is that they're planning. So apparently 10 months ago, there were statements made by the Trump administration that they were going to reduce spending by $45 billion in 2018 for domestic discretionary spending. And now we're looking at an increase instead of a reduction, an increase. This new budget proposal adds $63 billion to that number. From $471 billion to $579 billion amounts to a nearly 23% shift in less than 1 year. $63 billion hike in existing spending amounts to a 12.2% boost. It's these numbers are they're hard to get your mind around. You're like, what's the plan here? What do we decide we're going to do here? So we need to be careful here. Anything the Democrats are like jumping up and down and fine with, because I haven't been able to find any of the Democrats like whining and complaining about it. Yeah, I'm looking here. Looky here. Yeah, looking on down. I'm on Mediaite. Yeah. I don't see anything. I don't see any Democrats screaming and wailing and crying. That's a bad sign. That's a really bad sign. So in news of the absurd and weird and oddly kind of dissatisfying, a woman is saying that staffer told her to flush her emotional support hamster down the toilet. Oh my goodness. First of all, I know I'm going to make some people mad, but emotional support hamster? You got to be kidding me, right? You're actually you're joking. You're joking. Emotional support hamster. Come on, y'all. We have to draw the line. That's why some of the airlines are saying, no, you can't bring your animal on the plane so it can, do its business, and everybody has to put up with that on the plane. There's a reason why they put the animals below. So if you're so emotionally stunted and you have so many problems that you can't fly without an animal, maybe you should take the train, or maybe you should drive yourself, or maybe you should be in therapy so you can get to the place where you can actually travel without the animal. I mean, come on. And here's what's funny about it. I see people now with their emotional support animals in the airport, and when you sit down, you glance over and they've got a dog, or usually it's a dog, and the dog is dressed up like a human, which I'm guilty, y'all. We dress our dog up. He's wearing a sweater right now, but we don't take him on the plane as an emotional support animal. Not that I'm judging. I guess I'm judging you. So you got these people sitting there, and they're on their cell phones, and they got their water bottle, and they've got a bowl out with water for the dog, and they're literally hydrating. The dog is just getting super hydrated. They're like getting their 80 ounces in right then and there, like they're on a Fitbit or something. And then they get on the plane. Now, I always wonder to myself, with this dog drinking all this water right here on this carpeted surface out here in the waiting area before you get on the plane, when is she going to take this dog outside to do its business? And how can she? We've already been through the TSA. Where are the dogs supposed to use the bathroom? The other thing is they don't have hard cases anymore. So it used to be the only way you could take your dog on a plane was if they were in a hard-sided case. So obviously it has the air holes up on the top, and down below, it's all solid, and it's kind of airtight down below. Now they're all carried in these modified purses, which don't look watertight. So if the dog has an accident in there, you just, what? Like, what are the other people supposed to do? The rest of us who just want to get on the plane and have an empty seat in the middle and lean up against the window and, suffer through your 2-hour flight to wherever. What are the rest of us supposed to do while your dog is using the bathroom on the plane and you're emotionally getting support from it? That's why this story is even more odd than those stories. So you've got this college student, Belen Aldecosia, claims she had to flush her emotional support hamster Pebbles down the toilet because of bad information from Spirit Airlines. Aldecosia said, "She was so loving. It was like she knew I needed somebody." Aldecosia said she bought Pebbles after developing a painful growth in her neck. Her doctor certified the dwarf hamster as an emotional support animal. The tumor ended up being benign, but still so painful that she withdrew from Wilson College in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and planned a trip back home to Florida to get the growth removed. Aldecosia booked a flight from Baltimore's Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport back down to Fort Lauderdale. She then called the carrier, Spirit Airlines, ahead of time to ask if she could bring Pebbles on the flight. The phone rep said yes. The mistake was repeated, Aldecosia said, when she showed up for the flight on November 21st, and the Spirit agent checked in her and Pebbles without stopping them. They gave me the wrong information more than once, she said. They changed when another Spirit flight staffer reportedly stopped her right before the security checkpoint and told her rodents aren't allowed on flights, even in the cargo hold. Aldecosia agreed to take a later flight, but didn't have friends and family in Baltimore to accept Pebbles. So here's where the story gets real, y'all. Aldecosia said she ran through her options. The rental car agencies didn't have any availabilities. The 21-year-old was too young to rent a vehicle anyway. She considered a Greyhound trip, but that would have taken days. I didn't have other options, arguing that flushing Pebbles down the toilet was more humane than letting her run around in the cold to get hit by a car. Spirit spokesman Derek Dombrowski, poor guy, to have to deal with this story, said Aldecosia only got the story partially right. He said records show that, yes, the phone representative said wrong information to the college student, That said, he disputed the claim that any employee suggested killing the hamster. To be clear, at no point did any of our agents suggest this guest, or any other for that matter, should flush or otherwise injure an animal. Alda Cosia is thinking about a lawsuit. So, her attorney, Adam Goodman, says it wasn't a giant peacock that posed a danger. It was a tiny, cute, harmless hamster that could fit in the palm of her hand. And so they're going to sue. And I don't even know what to tell you right now. Like, I'm just reeling from the reality of that story. It's hard for me to really, like, get any... I just don't know what are we to do when the hamsters are getting flushed down the toilet at the airport instead of going on in. So I don't know if you guys saw President Trump's approval rating is at 48%, and he addressed the National Prayer Breakfast this morning, and I would cover those stories, but I got to talk about somebody that has been on the show before, and I certainly like her. I think she seems pretty nice. But Omarosa is now on Big Brother. Have y'all seen this story? So Omarosa went on to Big Brother. It's Celebrity Big Brother. So it's a reality TV show, and she's on it. She entered the Celebrity Big Brother house on Wednesday, and the ex-Trump staffer made several references to the White House backstabbing. She said she tried to be the administration's voice of reason about the president's tweeting, but was attacked for it. She singled out Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner for blame, claiming they cut off her access to the president. She said America is going to not be okay under President Trump. It's so bad. And the White House fired back Thursday afternoon and said Omarosa was fired 3 times on The Apprentice, and this is the 4th time we've let her go. Shots fired, y'all. Gird your loins. And also, you might need some popcorn. And she had limited contact with the president while here. She has no contact now. So I guess the love affair is over. It's done. She is no longer friends with President Trump. And she is all over the Daily Mail. I got an email from Adweek a few minutes ago. They have the video of her on Big Brother. It's up everywhere. And she is just dishing about her time in the White House. And my thing is, can we just talk for a second about how hard it is to, we've had very few Black women who've achieved the kind of success where they've actually been asked to be a member of the administration of a president. I mean, who comes to mind first? Condoleezza Rice. And then there were a number of staffers who happened to be Black and women who worked for the Obama administration. And notice, out of all of those, as few as they may have been, none of them have left their positions and then gone on to publicly attempt to embarrass the administration that they're coming out of. I mean, Condoleezza Rice is the vault. There is nothing coming out of her, nothing negative about President Bush. Those who worked for President Obama, as much as I may hate the policies, those people are staunchly in support of that man, and they're not going to come out and do this kind of behavior. And then you have Omarosa. And we've had some pretty good interviews, so this is not a personal attack. But what is she doing? She's destroying any opportunity that she has of ever being in a position like that again. And for what? Do you understand Celebrity Big Brother Celebrity Big Brother? That's a show where you could talk about anything. You could just talk about actual anything. You don't have to dish about the president. I just wish she wasn't doing this because it sets up an opportunity for distraction away from the policies that we're supposed to be paying attention to. And we have some very serious political fights to engage in 2018. And we should not be reading all of these stories about Omarosa dishing about the president. And so now they've come out and they've hit her back. You have Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah told reporters Thursday that the administration's reaction to Omarosa's deep cuts was to them not very seriously. So they are not feeling like it's that bad. So they've got her on Celebrity Big Brother, and she's got on what looks like a nightgown, and she's wrapped in a blanket on a couch, and she's sharing her deepest thoughts with this other contestant, Ross Matthews, about how America's not going to be okay. Really? That sounds like something a Democrat would say. Is she? So she was choking up when she was sharing all of this. And I'm not even going to read all the comments that she made. It's just a shame. It's just really unfortunate. So they have her here. The Celebrity Big Brother cast includes Meta World Peace. That's a person. Brandy Glanville. Oh my goodness. Keisha Knight Pulliam. No, that's Rudy from The Cosby Show. Remember cute little Rudy? She's grown up and now she's on Celebrity Big Brother. Why? All right. That's the show, you guys. God bless you. Have a great night this evening. Try to stay warm. Record low temps again. That bites. Anyway, we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right tomorrow, right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget to visit StacyOnTheRight.com and hit the subscribe button for the weekly newsletter because it's awesome. Okay? All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow.